The SR-87 highway, stretching through the desert expanses of Arizona, had always evoked a sense of unease among locals. Not because it was particularly dangerous, accidents there were rare, but because of its remoteness, lack of lighting, and endless miles without a single turn, creating the feeling that you weren't driving on a road, but trapped in someone's dream, from which you'd never wake. It was around 2 a.m. when highway patrol officers, Sergeant Tom Johnson and his partner Officer Billy Rhodes, were slowly driving along that desolate stretch once again. They were listening to an old radio and chatting about nonsense, when suddenly a faint light appeared in the distance. It looked like a car parked on the shoulder, alone, without hazard lights or emergency signals. Just a dark vehicle, left in the dead of night, where there were no houses or cell reception. "You see that, Billy?" Tom asked, turning down the radio.
Maybe it broke down?
Billy replied with a yawn. At least something to break the boredom tonight. They slowly approached. A black sedan was neatly parked on the side of the road, but it looked as though it had been deliberately left where no one would ever pass by accident. The car was clean, gleaming, as if just washed. No visible damage. Temporary plates, tinted windows prevented them from seeing inside. "Well then, let's see who the night brought us," Tom muttered, stepping out of the car. Both officers approached the vehicle. A man was sitting inside. At first glance, nothing unusual. Dark suit, white shirt, neatly combed hair, but he was wearing sunglasses. At night, and he wasn't moving, even when the officers shone their flashlights directly in his face. "Good evening, sir," Tom said, tapping on the window. "Are you all right? You know you're parked in a no parking zone?" The man slowly turned his head. No emotion, no words. Tom tapped the window again, a little harder. Finally the glass slowly rolled down, and the man said, "Engine stalled. Waiting for help." "Do you have ID?" Billy asked, stepping closer. The man pulled out a wallet, but it was empty. No license, no credit cards. Only a few business cards with strange symbols, in a language they didn't recognize. "Sir, this is unusual. We need your name, and to verify the car's registration." The man took out a phone, an old model, no GPS, not even a touch screen, and pressed something. No sound, no screen. He just pressed a button and tucked it away again. "I'm not here to cause problems," he said. "I'll be leaving soon." His voice was incredibly calm, too calm. No fear, no anxiety, like someone who knew with absolute certainty that he was in control. "You know, like in the movies," Billy whispered to Tom. "This guy looks like a spy, or a hitman, or just someone with a weird fashion sense," Tom replied. "But it still doesn't explain why he's sitting here, in the middle of the night, wearing sunglasses, and without ID." They returned to their car to run the license plate, but the system came back with nothing. No record, no registered owner, no car. "Impossible," Tom muttered. "It's either a top-tier fake, or something much more interesting." When they returned to the man, he was sitting just as calmly, staring straight ahead. And at that moment, something clicked inside Tom. For the first time that night, he felt genuine unease. Not fear, more like a creeping sense that they had stumbled upon something far bigger than they were ever meant to understand. "Something's not right here, Billy," he whispered. "Really not right." Officers Tom Johnson and Billy Rhodes approached the stranger with a full set of suspicions and questions. The situation was escalating. A car with no registration, a person without documents, a phone, a relic from the past, and that cold, calculated calmness. Too perfect, too inhuman. So Tom began, stopping by the window. "You don't have any documents, no registration, and you're sitting in a car that officially doesn't exist. Do you understand how this looks?" The man silently nodded, as if there was nothing wrong with this. "Let's put it this way, sir," Billy intervened, crossing his arms. "If you don't identify yourself, we have the right to detain you until your identity is established. You don't want to spend the night at the station, do you?" "Is that really necessary?" the man said calmly. "Yes, damn it, it's necessary," Tom replied sharply. "This isn't an absurd theater. We're not playing spy. The tension between the parties began to hum like a high-voltage wire. Although the officers still maintained formal politeness, Billy's voice now had a hint of condescension. Maybe he's from a cult, he murmured to Tom. Or some experimental show. You know those YouTube social experiments. Like a James Bond from Walmart. Tom snickered, smiling. Both of them laughed openly. They began making up nicknames for him. Agent Zero, Mr. Matrix, Sunglasses 2024, and the man still sat silently, unmoved. And that was what annoyed them most, his indifference, as if the entire situation was just a minor obstacle in his grand plan. Do you seriously think that kind of behavior will help? He asked dryly, looking at Billy through his sunglasses. Do you seriously think we'll ignore this? Billy shot back. All right, enough playing. Get out of the car. Slowly. The man didn't move. Did you hear me? I'm waiting. For what, damn it? For orders. Tom grabbed his radio. Center. This is Johnson. We have a suspicious subject without documents. Suspicious vehicle. Requesting a check through extended databases. Possible agency or federal service. I repeat. Looks classified. The radio crackled for a few seconds. Then came a brief reply. Acknowledged. Sending request. Time seemed to slow down. The darkness around them grew heavier, as if an additional shadow had fallen over the road. Suddenly the man slowly turned to Tom. If you don't stop, this will be your official misconduct. Yeah, maybe even an international incident. Billy laughed. Who are you? Jason Bourne. I'll say one thing, the stranger quietly said. You don't want to know who I am. These words were spoken without threat, just a statement of fact, like someone who knows time will put everything in its place. This is too much, Tom said, pulling out handcuffs. Get out. Last warning. And the man got out, slowly, calmly, as if heading for dinner. His movements were incredibly precise, calculated. No panic, no resistance. He simply raised his hands, walking towards the handcuffs. The officers, still mocking, moved closer, and at that moment, the radio crackled sharply. Johnson, Rhodes, stop immediately. I repeat, stop the detention immediately. High-level agent identified. Full immunity. I repeat, do not touch. Suddenly, like thunder in the night, the atmosphere changed. The officers froze. The silence around seemed to have been vacuumed out. What? Billy whispered. Full immunity. Tom slowly asked, not believing what he'd heard. The man silently watched them, and for the first time, a slight smile. Small, barely noticeable, but enough to freeze the blood. I told you, I'm not here to cause trouble. The stranger's small smile disappeared as quickly as it appeared. He silently raised his hands, giving the officers a choice. Obey the radio order or cross a line that could cost them their careers, and possibly their lives. Tom and Billy exchanged glances. For the first time that night, there was no anger or mockery in their eyes, but doubt. Then, fear. Full immunity, Billy whispered again, but this time with genuine concern. Step back from him, Tom said quietly, taking a step back. His hands slowly lowered from the handcuffs. The stranger cautiously lowered his hands, as if there were no threat. It was as if they had all known each other for a long time. Then he pulled out a small black wallet, thin, without any logos. He opened it, and the officers saw something they weren't expecting, an ID. Not just any ID, but one with a holographic stamp shimmering in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and a language they couldn't even recognize. The ID read, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Clearance Level, Black Shadow, Active Operation, Classified, Name Jonathan Creed, Status, Agent on Duty, and beside it, a small photo, the same man, wearing glasses, with that same cold stare. Tom took a step back, his breath suddenly short. I'm sorry, Agent Creed, we didn't know. You weren't supposed to, Creed answered calmly. That's your job. Doubts, checks, reactions to an unusual situation, all by the protocol. But, there are things you're not meant to know. What level of access is that? Billy asked, trying not to look the agent in the eyes. The one your commanders haven't heard of. The officers fell silent, and Creed slowly walked toward his car, stopped by the door, and turned. You've interfered with an operation that may save, or destroy, several lives. Tonight is a knot on which thin threads are tied. Did we ruin everything? Tom cautiously asked. Not yet, but you were very close. Then another signal came through the radio. Johnson, Rhodes, special message for the agency, per federal coordinator's order. A helicopter is on its way. Expect evacuation of Black Shadow object. Repeat, Black Shadow. A helicopter. Billy didn't believe it. Here, in the sky, something hummed. A low, almost underground sound. And indeed, in a few minutes, a black helicopter appeared above the highway with no identifying marks. It hovered in the air, and a platform descended from it, without people, without voices, just a flashing red light. Creed glanced at them one last time. You've done your part, officers. Now let me do mine. And he stepped onto the platform. But just as he did, a sound stopped him again, not mechanical, not human. It was a short, sharp signal from his wrist device. Creed stopped. He opened the cover on his wrist. Beneath it was a tiny screen, blinking with a red message. Target approaching. Plan change. Activates. IREN code. The officers exchanged glances. They hadn't seen this before. Creed turned back to them, but this time his gaze held no calm, only determination. Stay here. If you see a black SUV, don't approach, don't speak, just step away. And, forget you ever met me. He made a quick motion. Something seemed to flicker in his fingers. Perhaps it was a microweapon, maybe a transmitter, or something worse. Tom and Billy silently nodded, not because they believed him, but because their instincts told them he wasn't joking. This was about more than a special operation. This was about something bigger. The helicopter immediately ascended into the sky, and disappeared into the night silence in a few seconds. And on the road, there were only two policemen, in complete silence, with thoughts that would never be the same again. Did you record all this on camera? Billy whispered. Forget it, Tom replied. Some things are better left in memory, if we even remember them at all. A few minutes after the helicopter disappeared, the empty night highway sank back into its usual silence. Tom and Billy stood there, stunned, their minds swirling with questions. Who was that man? What was the siren code? And most importantly, why did they feel like they had just stepped into something they would neither be able to explain nor forget? But the calm didn't last long. In the distance, over a hill, headlights appeared, not flickering like a patrol car, but steady. A black SUV, glossy, and with tinted windows, sped toward them. It didn't stop as it passed, but both cops noticed a woman with glasses, holding a phone to her ear, behind the wheel, and beside her, sat a burly man in a gray coat, staring at them with the same cold professional gaze as Creed. He said not to get closer, whispered Tom. It's them. The target. The SUV disappeared in the same direction the helicopter had gone, and a moment later, a powerful explosion shattered the silence. A fireball appeared on the horizon, shaking the earth. Billy collapsed to the ground. What was that? His voice trembled. The radio in the patrol car crackled to life, but instead of the usual voices, there was only digital noise, followed by a short encrypted signal, then silence, and then siren code, activated. All independent observers under review, return not expected. What the hell? Tom muttered. Independent observers, is that us? Is this about us? They began to realize, they hadn't just witnessed an operation, they had crossed a line beyond which nothing would be the same. The officers were still sitting in the car, when the service phone rang. The screen didn't show a number, only secure line. Tom hesitated, but pressed answer. Thomas Virgil, a voice said calmly from the other end. It was incredibly composed, like a news anchor, but something in it sent a chill down his spine. You and your partner have just been identified as potential obstacles in a federal case. Therefore, what? Who is this? Are you from the FBI? Tom shouted. but the voice ignored him. Therefore, fragments of the events from the last 4 hours will be erased from your memory. This is necessary for national security. You will be taken to an isolated location for a 12-hour quarantine. Provide coordinates. You will be picked up without resistance. Recess? Are you kidding me? A drone is already above you. Do not leave the vehicle. Tom jumped out of the car and looked up. Indeed, a nearly invisible drone was hovering silently above them. At that moment, Billy noticed something again on the tablet that Creed had left behind. All the data had been erased, except for one video file that began to play on its own. On the screen was surveillance footage, people in white, tables, masks, cameras, a person on the table. They were screaming, but there was no sound. Only one phrase appeared at the top. This isn't just weaponry. This is control. Then the screen went black, and the tablet melted in his hands. This isn't a special operation, Tom. This is something else. They're testing something on people. Billy was as pale as paper, and then their phones turned off. The cars wouldn't start. Half an hour later, an unmarked van pulled up. 2 masked figures silently took them away, and at the spot where Creed had stood, there remained a trace of something that looked like a burnt cross in the metal, like a symbol, like a seal. The next day, local news reported an explosion at a gas reservoir in a desert zone outside the city. The version was quickly pulled from the air. An hour later, a news story emerged. Military exercises, planned explosions, no casualties. But Tom and Billy knew the truth. By morning, 3 men in black suits, without any IDs or names, arrived at their precinct. One, an older man with noticeable scars on his fingers, simply said, "You saw something you weren't supposed to. It will stay between us forever." They didn't threaten, they just made it clear that fabricated stories about an agent could disappear along with the people who told them. Later, Tom learned from a leak in an old database that Jonathan Creed was indeed listed in the FBI files, marked deceased in action, 2003. He had died during a mission, so it couldn't have been him. They stopped? Or maybe it could, if he had never been in the system. And that was what terrified him the most. 2 days passed. Tom and Billy returned to duty, or so they thought. But something was off. Their memories of the events were erased, not entirely, just fragments. They remembered the man in the coat, the cocky smile, but his face was blurred. The events felt like a fog. The only thing that troubled them both was the feeling that they had touched something they weren't meant to see. Meanwhile, in a government center, in a large glass hall where the walls seemed like screens, the man they knew as Creed stood before a group of suited individuals. "The task is complete. The leak has been neutralized. The experiment went as planned," he said, tapping a tablet. "What about the cops?" one of the women asked without looking up from her documents. "Their memory has been partially wiped. Level 3 forget protocol activated. They pose no threat, but one of them seems to be suspecting something." On the screen behind him, a camera in the police office showed Billy sitting at a desk, looking at a blurry screenshot of the self-destructing video. The text, barely visible, said, "This is control. If necessary, clean up." Someone in the room whispered, "No, for now observe." Agent Creed nodded, and turned. There were no emotions in his eyes, but as soon as he was in the hallway, his face shifted, an imperceptible mix of exhaustion, guilt, and inner conflict. Meanwhile, in a regular police station, Tom watched his partner. Billy had started to grow quieter, locking himself in rooms, writing and drawing diagrams. Tom feared his friend was losing his mind, but even more, he feared that Billy might be right. "Remember that tablet?" Billy suddenly asked. "I don't remember anything. They said it was a gas leak, explosion, amnesia. That's it. Forget it." "But what if it's not? What if we really met someone who's hiding from the government, or even working for it? What if we became part of an experiment?" Tom fell silent. Then he pulled a small metal token from his pocket, the same token that had accidentally fallen from Creed's coat, and somehow ended up in his own. It had only 3 letters on it. ORB, and coordinates. I found this the next morning, but I decided not to say anything. I don't know why. But now, I want to know the truth. A few days later, they followed the coordinates, deep into the mountains where there was no phone signal, and no one around. They reached an old radio station, that should have been abandoned long ago. As soon as they approached, the gates opened by themselves. Cameras recorded their faces. Inside they were already waiting, and among them was Agent Creed, no longer in a coat or sunglasses, but for the first time, truly himself. Now that you're here, it's time to tell you who I really am, and why you were meant to learn more than you were allowed. They entered the room. It was almost entirely sterile, white walls, a screen spanning the entire space, and dozens of eyes watching them. People were sitting, no ordinary people, no police officers. These were those who controlled another level of reality. They didn't work for the state. They worked above states. Agent Creed approached. He wore a simple dark suit and an ordinary shirt, but his eyes glowed with dangerous confidence, the kind of confidence that comes from seeing things that shouldn't exist. Welcome, officers. You passed a test that 98% of people fail. You felt something that most will never experience: intuition. You didn't let go, and that's why you're here. What is all this? Billy asked, his voice firm but his heart racing. I want to know everything. Creed gestured to the room. This is Project Orbita, a top-secret initiative. We track, detect, and neutralize everything that threatens the structure of the world order. But sometimes we need more than spies. Sometimes we need intuitive, independent thinkers, those who can think outside the protocol. You're just that. You noticed me, didn't get scared, didn't bow to authority, didn't stop, even when the system tried to erase your memory. Tom and Billy exchanged a glance. What was this? An offer? A threat? A threat? And now what? Tom asked again. You have a choice. Either you join us. New names, new lives. We'll train you, give you resources, and you'll be part of a force that truly changes the world. Or, you go back, but with a complete memory wipe. No trace of you will remain, not even a shadow of doubt or a memory of today. Billy stepped forward. How can we trust you? You can't. But if you still remember what you saw that night on the road, you have no choice. Because the truth doesn't disappear. It will torment you until it destroys you. Creed pressed a button. A video appeared on the screen. The full version of the first night. What they didn't remember, Creed talking not to someone, but to a device that was receiving a signal from a satellite. He was coordinating the capture of an undercover agent, and at the moment the officers approached, a malfunction occurred. They were accidentally drawn into an operation they were only meant to observe via drones. The next morning in the precinct, silence. Only one of them sat at the desk. Tom. He was drinking coffee and staring into space. Where's Billy? Asked the young intern. On vacation, Tom answered quietly. A long one. But Tom's eyes were different now. Deeper, more alert. It seemed he saw more than he was supposed to. The camera pulls away. Outside the window, a normal city. Everything seems normal, but in the shadows a man in a coat, the same one. He's watching, smiling, and then he disappears. Thank you for watching until the end. Subscribe to the channel, leave likes, and check out other interesting stories.